Hey, welcome back to the podcast. And would you like to be the kind of person that achieves everything that you know you could achieve and more? And have you ever struggled or thought you maybe weren't that smart or thought that you just were not cut out for learning? Well, you're going to be super excited here to talk to Hannes Jordaan today because he has an amazing story to share with you that you will relate to when it comes to picking up new skills, creating a business, doing well in school, whatever your learning difficulty currently is. Hannes has experienced it, and Hannes has achieved a breakthrough that he wants to talk to you about today as far as having your support system and as far as kind of learning and thinking outside the box. So Hannes, glad to be talking to you today.
Hi, Robert. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you. It's great to be here and help out some people. Hopefully what I can share will be useful for somebody else out there like me. Might not be for everybody, but yeah, let's have a chat, basically.
All right. I'm excited. So can you tell us what you do, what your profession is, and most importantly, what's your current passion? What has you super excited these days?
Well, I implement ERP software, which is enterprise resource planning for major companies like BT and all the big people, also smaller companies. What's got me excited is, the ability to use integrations and workflows and automating things. And I'm always looking for things to, as I would say, optimize, automate, and only then outsource them. I don't like to go straight into outsourcing because you often have problems. What I've learned in my experiences, it's better to optimize those. And we're learning a lot about that at the moment.
Okay, so optimize before outsourcing. And as far as you and your optimization process, you tell me that you have had experienced problems with learning and experience problems with getting things done. You feel like many times there's this common problem of there's a problem to be solved, there's something to be taught or learned, and a lot of people just cannot conform to watching videos or reading books. And you told me earlier that you have come across difficulties with this. So can you tell me when that started, when that happened? When did you hit this brick wall and say, I have this thing to learn, I have this assignment, I just can't get through it? What happened?
Okay, Robert. Yeah, I think it started at school when I basically had learning difficulty. And, I grew up in a very conservative environment in South Africa where, you're given a book and you should be able to process that and go to an exam and actually get an A, basically. There wasn't really, any help available for how that is processed. I've realized in my life that finding different methods of processing information so that you can convert it to knowledge, because as I said to you earlier today, information sets us free, knowledge is great, but, there's so many frustrations of processing it. We get bombarded with a lot of reading material. And if you have problems with reading, at school, I actually didn't do too great. I never got the A grades. I was taken to reading classes to read quicker, still had problems. However, over time, I've realized that you can consume it with things like audible books, like this podcast. You can listen to things. You can also implement certain things on your work environment, like I've done. My emails now get read to me. So, there are automations that make things easier to process. Also prefer visual to the written word. So that's basically what I've implemented. And it's helped me achieve, a successful business that allows me to consume and implement things a lot quicker. So optimizing, I've implemented different methods of how I, consume and optimize the content that I get into this noggin of mine, as I can put it, basically.
And there's a couple of interesting things that you said in there and it seems like the way you picture things is there's information, and then you process that into knowledge. And when you're explaining that, it sounds to me it's like when you open up your kitchen cupboard and there's all the food there. Well, you can't eat all the food at once, you'll get sick, but you still have to eat something. And you can't even really eat a little bit of everything. If you open all the cans and the boxes, everything will go bad. So you need to have somewhat of a strategy, and it can't all happen at once. And from what you told me just now, as far as like your successes, is that you have figured out what specifically works for you, right? Like you're talking about ways you can implement things, and you're talking about how there's an audio component sometimes to make that work for you. And I think about that a lot. I think about there's always like so much information, and I'm thinking about how can I weed out the 98% of information that I don't need, and how can I apply things like to use. But also there's also sometimes like the patience of, if I'm learning all kinds of concepts, I have to like stick with it until I can implement it. So how did you land on this idea of reading some things and listening to others? How did that come about?
I think a lot of influences has been with the program that I did with Pat Mesiti. And one of the things that got stuck in listening to his audio was reduce to produce. And I think, as you said with the cupboard, is learning to say no is the biggest thing that you can do in your life. Saying no to email, saying no to all kinds of things, and focusing on what is needed in the moment. Only focus on what you need to learn right now. That gives you the ability to, get yourself a list, put it somewhere to say, maybe someday. Your brain then processes that, stops thinking about it, basically, because it knows it's been parked somewhere. That allows you to focus on the now. So some things you say no to, like all those pesky emails you get from everybody. Other things you park down in a list that I've done successfully. And it's been proven by research that your brain actually keeps processing something until you write it down. So write it down somewhere. Say, I will make that special food next week. You don't have to have it today. You don't have to become that master chef today. So what I did is, that's the first thing I did, decided what was it that I needed. And then I incorporated in my life, when I go for a walk with a dog, I listen to audio, so I'm processing that. When I'm listening to my emails now, it actually goes a lot quicker for me. And then I love video because it's just a way for me to actually see what happens. And again, there's something in my brain, I found it just works a lot easier if I can see it being done instead of trying to do it all by myself and then having to deal with the mental baggage of not being able to do it correctly. And then, as I mentioned earlier, finally, I've got some really good people that are there for me when I need them, and that gives you a lot of reassurance, basically. Hopefully that answers the question for you, Robert.
It doesn't, and that's great, because it's really easy to think of information, learning, all of this as very flat, one-dimensional, right? As there's a list, there's facts and figures I need to learn, and you're saying that there's all this dimensionality to it. There is, first of all, you're saying write down what you're thinking, otherwise those thoughts will just stay in your head, and you'll be spinning your mental wheels, and you'll be expending all this mental energy on just the same thing over and over. So write it down, and you're saying write down the things that you want to do, but also the things that you will say no to. And this seems to me like having a strategy of planning for distractions ahead of time and planning for resisting distractions ahead of time. That way you know that you won't be distracted by all these emails, or limit your time to emails. And I also like how just your attitude here is to get the information coming in different forms, right? And it's easy enough to say, well, listen instead of reading, or watch a video instead of reading. But you even said little things like, well, put the podcast or put the training in your earbud, and then take the dog for a walk. And so that way becomes part of your habit, your routine. You incrementally get this information dripped out to you during the day. But then what's even better is that you even said it's not just about written and audio and visual, but sometimes you really get stuck, or sometimes you're not even sure if you're asking the right questions. And that's where the people and the support system come in. And so now you have me curious, okay, when you came from the South Africa, very strict corporal punishments, very like old-fashioned type of schooling, and you have since evolved into your software career and building these ERP systems. So how did you go from there to being stuck to having all these new strategies that you have now?
I think it's for my passion to create, Robert. I love creating. When you implement and automate a process, you're creating something new. So I might not be Leonardo da Vinci that paints Mona Lisa, but I'm creating. And that's what I love about it. That's my passion. That's why I like to learn, because I like to teach. And, what I've done is put these anchors in place that, when I start up my machine in the morning, I take 3 deep breaths and I remind myself not to be distracted. And those are anchors that I put in place. And that gives me more time to create, gives me time to actually go, I've got too many hobbies, but I think a lot of people do. But at the end of the day, I like creating. And I think that's my passion, what I like about the software that we do and the integrations. So that's where my passion comes from.
And that's interesting to think about, because as you know, we all go through multiple careers in our lifetime, or even like multiple lifetimes, right? You might have this job and then learn this new skill and then create this business. And many times those skills carry over. And so I like how you see yourself as a creator, someone who creates, and not just someone who's stuck in just one profession, just one career, just one thing for the rest of your life. And I imagine that this passion for creating, it kind of tickles the brain in just the right way, as far as, like you said, you love to teach, you love to code software. I'm sure you love to code problems. And so I imagine that this creating itch that you have can be applied in many different ways. Like you said, even hobbies, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I think my mom still doesn't know how her radio fell apart when I was in primary school. I took things apart all the time, basically. Didn't get them back together always, but it's it's really a passion of mine to learn stuff. I'm always interested. I love space, SpaceX and the likes. It's amazing. And it's often going back to that learning thing. It's not everybody wants to learn and become a rocket scientist out of a book. You can become a rocket scientist by consuming information in your own way that helps you absorb it. You don't have to read a book. You can listen to that book, and that is the same. And if that gives you the knowledge and that to facilitate your creativity and your passions, then I think that's what I've learned, is stop thinking you have to read a book to be able to process information. I loathe using the word clever, because I think clever is unmeasurable. I think it's what your passion is. That's important. And that should be enough for you. What are you passionate about? What is it that you like doing? And you will learn in the right manner to be able to do what your passion is, basically. And create, like me, maybe. I don't know. I think everybody creates every day. I just don't know it.
And you and I are creating right now. So this is great. And this is very reassuring that it's important to find a way, right? There's where you are now, where you're stuck, or you don't know something, or you need to figure out how to be a rocket scientist or whatever skill or problem. And there is some path that will get you there. And it might be watching videos, but if you can't figure it out just from reading a book, it doesn't mean that you're dumb or you're wrong or you're broken. There just is a better path for you, which, as you know, nowadays, it's far easier than it was before, right? Now with YouTube and many universities like MIT put their course curriculum online. So we have a lot of new opportunities, open doors for us all. But then some people are still stuck, right? Even with this abundance of content, even with all these new resources, people still get stuck. So why do you think that is? And have you become kind of stuck or frustrated, or have you stalled out at any point, dealt with maybe like perfectionism, procrastination? Have you gotten stuck anywhere along this process of enjoying the creative process?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's so many influences out there. I think a big one is reciprocity. You know, you often get given this free information and then you feel like you have to learn it. You know, you've got to learn everything. You've got to consume everything. And that's a human thing, you know. It's very well used by a lot of people in the wrong way, maybe sometimes. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. Learning to say no is the biggest skill that you need to learn, that I've learned. And if you can't say no because you find it, you know, essential to your learning path, write it down somewhere and come back to it later. You don't have to get into that overwhelm that we all get. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying no. You know, again, society makes us, oh, you've got to say, you've got to know everything. You've got to know what's going on in the weather. You've got to know what's going on in the Middle East, what's happening with cryptocurrency. You know, are you making enough money? Are you a super chef in the kitchen? You can run a marathon. You know, there's so many things that we get, you know, judged on. Saying no, I don't need to be a marathon runner. I walk my dog every day, and that's enough for me. And I think being able to do that brings a lot of calmness for me. It's basically done that. It's being able to say no, because, you know, I don't think that there is toxic people out there either. I think there's toxic behavior. So knowing also which people to say no to and avoid their toxic behavior, for me, is super important. And those are the things that you just need to learn to say no to, you know. And you'll find what you need to and your method, which is what I've done, basically. And I don't feel bad about saying no anymore. I'm doing it at the right time for myself.
And how do you think you got to that place? Like, it's easy enough to say, well, let go of these things, let go of your ego, let go of the fear of missing out and keeping up to date on the latest Middle Eastern news. It's easy to say, well, cut out the people in your life who are just really dragging you down. But was it always easy? Were there difficulties in saying no? Were there false starts? Like, how do we all get to saying no and actually sticking to it? Because it's one thing to say it, another thing to do it.
Yeah, I think for me, I got to a point where overwhelm was so bad, basically. And one day I just kind of sat down and thought to myself, why am I giving my time to this action? Is it actually for my goal in the future? And that helped me to get to that point where I could start saying no, where I could value my time versus what the value was in front of me. So that email I get about, you can save 5% at Costco if you buy something today. I start now asking myself that question, the time. How much time will I have to do versus I can go out and enjoy my camper van, go walking with my dog, or am I just basically sitting there clearing out inboxes and emails? So I just basically got to a point where I said, what value does it bring to my life, basically, versus do I want to give it the value of my time? And I think if you realize that your time, that's the biggest thing you have to value, is your time. How much is it worth? And when you invest it, as we all know, the cliche, you can never get it back. So make sure you're getting the right value for it. And I was working 7 days a week with COVID. I think like a lot of people were, because we were keeping back. But I just realized, at the end of the day, life is going past you, and you cannot do everything, basically. You've got to focus on what is your passion, basically. So I'm still every day growing and pivoting. I'm not 100% right. And I think the day that you believe you are, you're being dishonest to yourself. All you can do is little habits every day, tiny habits. Put them in place, make small changes, and also remember to celebrate them, because we don't celebrate enough what we achieve. We only need to be driven. Oh, you got to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You don't hear people talking in normal conversations about, wow, you've done some great stuff today. You got up, you walked your dog, you didn't eat that bad food out of the kitchen. You didn't eat the chocolate. Yeah? No, we don't do that. All we do is, oh, you're overweight, you're bad, It's always a negative. Start celebrating, And that's another thing I learned. So as you can probably hear from this conversation, I'm constantly improving. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with not being perfect. And, I don't want to work with people that always think you have to be perfect to be worked with. So, and I think tomorrow I'll learn another thing. I'm trying to learn a new skill. I'm a radio amateur licensed, and I'm trying to get my intermediate. And yeah, I'll do it in my time, like everything I want to do, basically.
I like that a lot. That this is really deep and powerful as far as celebrating the small wins and maybe overcoming our own internal programming in a way, because it's very easy and it's very tempting to only focus on the negative, like you said, the negativity, the danger, the problem. That's what naturally gets attention. But then that's a miserable way to live your life. And when you chase perfection, you'll never reach it, and you'll just always be just having this negativity cycle of, well, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. And so you're telling us this very important message that it is good enough, you are good enough, you'll get there on your own time. And also you mentioned in there this whole idea of being dishonest with yourself. And I think from hearing you and speaking with you today, it's like a lot of us are dishonest about how things might change, right? As far as making a change in our life and thinking that we don't need to make habits and just one day it'll magically be different. It won't be different until you make the time to gradually get into these small habits, like you said, of walking the dog, or doing a little bit of learning, or a little bit of research, or getting your radio certification, just doing a little bit per day and having that honesty about ourselves. And I think that's huge for me, as far as the just like knowing what reality is, and knowing how you're actually doing, and not being in denial, because it seems like it is very easy for us to get caught up in the day-to-day, right? And you mentioned a little bit earlier of how you end up getting stuck in this rut, and you getting stuck in this routine. And next thing you know, you're paying attention to every little email. You're paying attention to 5% off Costco, just because that is the way that it has been the last several weeks, and that is what led you here. So this is great, because now if people are unhappy with what's led them there and it's time to make a change, well, then they need to be thinking about these deep, really important questions that you've mentioned of, like, what do I value? What's my purpose? What's my goal? What is this leading towards? And as far as you personally, Hannes, what is the newest thing on the horizon? What are you working on? What's coming up for you?
Robert, I'm working on a program to hopefully help other people learn from my experiences. And I would like to create a support group of people like-minded that are looking to constantly improve and celebrate the wins in between the day-to-day life. They can help each other with, putting in place the anchors, those important things that if you open that email, you anchor in, what am I going to do next? If I start my PC in the morning, what is it that I'm going to do? Take 3 deep breaths and remind myself of what my aim is of the day. So Those are the things. And then have somebody on the side and a group that can talk to each other without judgment. So I'm hoping to get that up and running where, you know, if you're standing in your local shop and you can see all these temptations around you, the chocolates and the crisps and the bad food, it's finding that support that you can maybe just text somebody and say, oh, I'm dying to buy that chocolate, but I shouldn't. And just having somebody to say, look, you know, it's fine if you get a dark chocolate, eat a small bit every day because it's good for your heart. Just make sure it's more than 80% cocoa. And that's what I mean. It's okay to have a chocolate. You just don't have to eat 5 slabs at the same time. And again, I think we're all supposed to be perfect. I don't know a different word for it, but, you know, and that's not acceptable. We need to start being able to, you know, open and deal with the mental side of being okay and being not perfect, if I can put it that way, Robert.
I like how you put that, and I like that idea a lot, that it does not have to be one extreme or the other, right? And you don't even really have to sacrifice. It's not a matter of, well, you never eat chocolate again. Just think it through and figure out a way to get what you want in a smart way anyway. And also what's also refreshing about many of the things you're mentioning here is it can be simple, right? So many people make things a tangled mess and make things complicated. And you're saying something as silly and simple as you sit at the computer, you take your 3 deep breaths and ask yourself what you're going to accomplish that day. It seems simple and it seems almost silly or superstitious, but if it works, why not continue repeating what is serving you and not doing what is not serving you? And the same idea of having a support system or a mentor or friends who are in it with you. It's such a simple concept, but it's so simple that so many people forget or miss out or just disregard that very simple advice that it works because it's simple. And so as far as people taking the next step with you and finding out what you're all about and contacting you, we said that HannesJordaan.com is the place to go, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And to spell that out, that is HannesJordaan.com.
Correct.
Fantastic. And as everyone's going to HannesJordaan.com, and as you and I are wrapping up, winding down our conversation, do you think we missed anything important today, or is there just one lasting piece of advice you want to tell listeners as we close up the show?
I think I would sum it up as do it afraid. You know, take that step, be kind to yourself, and don't worry about trying again. It's okay, you know, and there are people out there and there are ways that you can take care of yourself and what your needs are, basically. So I would say that's the first thing you've always got to tell yourself. You might be afraid to do it, but, you know, there's people out there that will support you and they will help you find the way for you to be able to, you know, do the things you're passionate about.